If Cadorus Township is going to allow data centers, then residents deserve the strongest protections possible. And after reading the proposed ordinance, I think there are still some major conversations missing because this really isn't about Cadorus Township. It's not even really about York County. It's about a global race for computing power that's moving faster than legislators, zoning boards, and local governments can keep up with. A few years ago, most people had never thought about data centers. Today, they're being proposed all over Pennsylvania. Why? Well, because of the amount of computing power required for artificial intelligence, it's exploding. The companies competing in this race are some of the largest companies on earth: Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, OpenAI, and their partners. And they all need the same thing: electricity, land, water, and massive amounts of computing infrastructure. Pennsylvania happens to be attractive because we have large amounts of developable land, existing power infrastructure, natural gas generation, access to water, proximity to major East Coast population centers. That's why you're seeing proposals, not just in York County, but across Pennsylvania. Residents in other communities have already raised concerns about the scale of projects, power demand, water use, generators, and local impacts. And here's the problem: the technology is moving at Silicon Valley speed, government isn't. Now, to be fair, after reading the ordinance, there are some things I genuinely like. They are requiring noise studies, water feasibility studies, environmental assessments, traffic plans, landscaping and buffering, decommissioning plans, emergency responder coordination. Those are all positive steps. This is not a lazy ordinance, but I don't think it's sufficient because it focuses heavily on what the facility looks like and not enough on the scale of the facility's impact. The biggest problem? Well, they're all lumped together. It's honestly my biggest concern. We're talking about data centers like they're all the same thing. They aren't. A small regional data center serving local businesses is completely different from a hyperscale AI campus. Different electrical demand, different cooling systems, different water usage, different substations, different backup generators, different infrastructure requirements, different community impacts. Yet, under the ordinance, they're largely grouped together under the same use category. Imagine if zoning treated a duplex, a 50-unit apartment building, and a 1,000-unit apartment complex as the same project. Nobody would think that's reasonable. So why are we treating data centers that way? The ordinance limits building size, but it doesn't really regulate the things that matter the most: power consumption. Because in the data center world, power demand often tells you more about community impact than the square footage of the building does. Also, they are just talking about the square footage of the building, not how many acres, how many buildings they can put on an acre. I think that there are some zoning issues they really still need to clean up. If I were writing the ordinance, I'd create tiers. Tier 1, smaller regional facilities. Tier 2, larger commercial data centers. Tier 3, hyperscale AI campuses. And the bigger the impact, the greater the scrutiny. I'd require independent grid studies, not studies prepared by the developer. Independent studies. Residents deserve answers about grid reliability, infrastructure upgrades, transmission impacts, long-term electric demand. A water study is good, a limit is better. What happens during droughts? What happens if nearby wells are affected? What happens if demand doubles? I believe in public transparency. They should publish noise monitoring, water consumption, air quality report, compliance reports. If the project is operating responsibly, well, transparency shouldn't be controversial. Many people don't realize that large facilities can rely on extensive backup generation systems. How often are they tested? How long will they operate? What emissions are produced? These questions deserve clear answers. If a community is taking on industrial scale infrastructure, what is the community receiving in return? Road improvements, emergency services funding, parks, trails, community investment, more tax dollars? These should be negotiated before approvals occur. Now, let's talk about Governor Shapiro's grid standards. To be fair, the governor is acknowledging many of the exact concerns residents have been raising: energy affordability, community engagement, environmental protection, water use, local jobs. The standards would tie certain state incentives and expedited permitting to those commitments. That's a step in the right direction. But my concern is that the standards primarily govern access to state support, tax incentives, and fast track permitting, not whether or not a project can ultimately be built. And multiple observers have pointed out the same issue. Standards are only as good as their enforcement mechanisms. Who verifies compliance? How often? What happens when commitments aren't met? What are the penalties? What happens if the developer promises one thing, delivers another? Those questions still matter because when billions of dollars are involved, accountability can't just be a suggestion. This isn't an anti data center video. It's not an anti AI video. It's not even an anti development video. It's a pro community video. I got into real estate after being in the hospitality world for 20 years. And people then thought it was just about food when I was there. Now they think it's just about real estate. At the end of the day, I serve people in the communities they live and work in. So again, this is a pro community video because the AI race is moving incredibly fast. The money involved is enormous, and once these facilities are approved, they're likely to be a part of our community for decades. So the question isn't, should we allow data centers? The question is, what protection should residents have before we do? And that's why local zoning hearings matter. Because the biggest decisions affecting your neighborhood aren't made in Washington. They're made at a township meeting on a Tuesday night that most people never hear about until the bulldozers arrive.